Welcome to Lesson 2. We're going to jump right in to building another game. This one was also originally developed for the Steampunk Dice Game Challenge, although it's actually a board game this time. So for this challenge, I started with a concept of cities, flying cities, engaging in warfare in the air. So they launch fighters, among other things, so we're going to be looking at planes. Now I know that because of the quad-fold board I'm going to use, that I need pieces that are 1 inch or less. So starting out, I'm looking at the large plane to see whether or not it'll fit. And as you can see, the width is 1.4, that's the wingspan, and the depth is 1.7, that's going to be from nose to tail. That's just not going to fit on a 1 inch square, so I can't use the large airplane. But here, on page 2 of the vehicle's parts, there's a small airplane. So, I'm going to look at the details of that. And as we'll see in just a moment, the width and depth are barely under 1 inch. So I can use the small airplanes as the fighters. I'm also going to need something to represent the city and something to represent a larger airship that the fighters will launch from. But I don't need to worry about the airship and the fighters being truly relative in size. They're just representations. So I click on a couple of different colors because I want 4 players, but I realized that the purple that I clicked on was large. To make it simpler, I'm just going to search for planes. Apparently that didn't quite work, so I'm going to try airplanes. So there we go. So we got black, orange, yellow, and blue. 4 colors. So we're going to have to make sure that other pieces that we put together use those same colors. Now each side is going to have up to 4 fighters at once. I've already kind of drafted the rules, so I don't need to worry so much about decision making and parts. But I don't have a parts section for the rules yet, or at least I'm going to pretend that I don't for the sake of this tutorial. So what else can we use that's the same color? We got these large boats. Those could kind of pass as airships. So we take a look at that. Sorry that so many things take a long time to load. Now here the width is fine, but once again the length is just too long, the depth of it. So that's not going to work unless I want people fussing around with angles so that things fit next to each other. In addition to the airships, I'm going to need something to represent the city, as I said. So I picture that as, a large structure of some sort. So I'm thinking I could use houses or something. Ideally, it would be a large, city-looking thing, roundish perhaps, but there are only so many parts available using the Game Crafter, so you have to frequently settle for something other than what you want. So the first house that I looked at is dimensions that could work, but I want to take a look at a couple of others to see if there's something that'll work better. Sometimes you settle for something that you know you don't really want to get a prototype so that you can test things out, and then, one day you go ahead and go order 10,000 custom-made games. I accidentally just closed the church that I had clicked on. So, going back to that. It's looking like any of the buildings could be used based on the scale, which is good from the perspective of having options, bad from the perspective that sometimes having too many options can lead to indecision. But I don't really like the square house. Reminds me too much of a Monopoly piece. The church, like the others, will fit, and it has a multi-level thing. And in my mind, the city can't just be one building. That's, if you look across the skyline, it's not a uniform height. So the church seems like a good option because it gives that multi-level variance of a skyline. So I'm clicking on the colors that I need to make sure that I can get the church in all of the appropriate colors. And it looks like I can. I can also get the other styles of houses in the same color if I change my mind later. Which is good because the church is a little on the expensive side. So now that I have my city, I still have the problem of needing an airship. So I'm just now looking for anything that matches the colors that I have. Cannons are interesting, but I know they come from Risk, which is problematic. The stackers could be good, because where the fighters can only take one hit in the game, the airships are more durable, and I could stack a couple of stackers on top of each other to represent how much health the ships have left. One thing you'll notice with the Game Crafter is some of the colors are just used more frequently than others. Black, for instance, is used for a lot of things like the dice and the bags, so you'll run across more of those. Sometimes it can clutter things up. Seeing these wedge dishes here, it seems like those could be useful. It's a little problematic because I know that they're from Trivial Pursuit, but they could be a way of tracking the level of damage for the ships. Open up the details so that I can take a look at that in a bit and finish out my search. So nothing here either. So it looks like the wedge containers are going to be a good option. They come in several colors, but I need to figure out if they come in all the colors that I'm using. And at present, they don't. It looks like black isn't available. So I can look for the other colors by using the color sorting options on the side. Not getting red or purple or white, but I do have green. So there's 4 color options, which is good, but now I need to figure out if I can replace the small airplane. See if it's also available in green. And as luck would have it, it is. So now I can go through and delete the black airplane. I will need to make sure that the church is also available in green, but chances are good that it will be. In fact, most of the pieces on the Game Crafter, if they aren't from another game, are going to be available in at least 6 different colors. Usually they'll be available in white, black, purple, orange, yellow, blue, green, and red. Game Crafter actually goes out of its way to try and get pieces in all of those colors. So now I need to go through and actually add the wedge containers. Now, when you go through and do this, I know normally I say, go to the Game Crafter, work along with me, pause the video at any time, and you're welcome to do it. You're welcome to explore and make choices and stumble a bit. But a lot of this lesson is figuring out what you're doing wrong in the process of putting together a game. It's trying things out and seeing what works. So this one may be a bit better to just take it a section at a time. So we're looking at the stackers now, usable, and we'll try to keep that in mind for later. Here we notice the wedge dishes are actually too big, so we went through a bit of effort for nothing. We'll have to go through and remove those, which means we still need something for our airship. Remember I said in the last video that the contest that this was all done for had a cost limit of $19.99. And ideally you would come in underneath that so that you'd have a profit margin left over, but really for the sake of the contest you could go right up to $19.99 because you can raise the cost later. But that does put a fairly firm limit on what you can reasonably do. So since I can't use the wedge, the stackers are looking like a more plausible option. But I might still stumble across something better later. Fortunately, like most things, they come in the right colors. Now, not using the wedges, I could go back to the black rather than using the green, but really that's just more work for me at this point, and the colors didn't bear any significance for the game. Now I'm going to need a couple stackers each because I have a couple of airships for each side. You may have noticed that I talked about putting stackers on top of each other, so I've already made a mistake in that if I wanted 2 airships per side, I'd need enough stackers to represent not just the number of airships, but the amount of damage they could take. But I'm going to look at the possibility of doing shards instead.